Thank you for inviting me to address the conference today. I'm interested in doing research that helps organisations to protect and promote the well-being of their workers, and firefighters are really close to my heart. Today I'm going to be talking about my research on critical incident stress debriefing, and I hope that it will be useful as the conference and the panel thinks about ways to improve support to firefighters, both men and women, and other emergency services workers in future catastrophic events such as Black Saturday. Critical incident stress debriefing is a group process that's led by a mental health professional and supported by a peer. A peer is an operational member of the agency who's also trained in psychological first aid and stress management. And the mental health professional and the peer lead the group of firefighters or emergency workers through a process and create a safe space to talk about the event, reactions to it, and education for how to manage those reactions, along with moving forward back into day-to-day life. But the issue of psychological debriefing after trauma is rather contested ground, and this stems back to the Cochrane review published in 2002, which looked at only the most high quality scientific studies. There are 11 studies in that review, 2 of which found that psychological debriefing may be associated with poorer outcomes. And on the basis of that evidence, organisations were cautioned against compulsory debriefing with victims of trauma. Now, based on largely the same body of evidence, the World Health Organization also released its recommendations cautioning against using psychological debriefing. So organisations and emergency agencies faced with these guidelines are removing debriefing as a form of support. Now, a really important thing to understand was that there were no high quality studies of group psychological debriefing that could inform these recommendations and reviews. So this body of evidence came from studies done with primary victims of trauma, people with severe burns who are debriefed while they're in hospital, motor vehicle accident victims, and victims of violent crime and other life-threatening events. Now, the study I led, which was conducted within the South Australian Country Fire Service, actually represents the very first randomised controlled trial or gold standard study of group critical incident stress debriefing. So what we did is we got groups of firefighters and we randomly split them into 3 different conditions: the psychological debriefing condition, stress management education session, and another condition which just involved completing the surveys. We call that screening only. What we found, first and foremost, is that there was no evidence of harm from psychological debriefing in our research. But importantly, we also found 2 areas of potential benefit in ratings of overall quality of life and in terms of reduced alcohol consumption following their debriefing relative to the other groups. This finding might be particularly important in a firefighting population which is made up of 90 to 95% men. Now, this evidence has currently made it through the first stage of the process in the United Kingdom's National Institute of Clinical Excellence system. And it's this system that actually informs the World Health Organization guidelines. So it's really positive that this study is being considered as part of the evidence base and could potentially change those guidelines. But it's not the only form of evidence out there. We know, for example, that firefighters and police officers will prefer debriefing to other forms of support. We know they find it valuable when they've gone through the process. And we know there are other studies out there that have found similar effects, although they may not be to the same very high and stringent scientific standards. But taking all of that evidence together, I think there's a good basis for continuing to use critical incident stress debriefing with trained emergency responders in the context for which it was originally designed. So I hope this is food for thought, and I hope it can inform you as you go on to discuss ways to support firefighters and emergency workers who are going out there putting life and limb on the line to support people in the most dire of circumstances. Thank you.